It wasn't a text message. That's the first thing I need you to understand, because if it had been a text, I might have read it differently. I might have processed it slower. But it wasn't a text. It was a voice memo. 43 seconds long, and I almost didn't open it. I was somewhere over Missouri, I think. Maybe Kansas. The window shade was down, and the guy next to me was already asleep with his mouth open, and I was trying to finish a project brief on my laptop before we landed in Denver. My phone was in airplane mode. I'd switched it on briefly when we had a layover in Charlotte, just long enough to check emails, and that's when the notification came in. A voice memo from my daughter's tablet. Her name in my contacts just says Pumpkin. That's what I've called her since she was 2. I almost swiped it away. I thought it was going to be her singing. She does that sometimes, records herself singing Taylor Swift songs, and sends them to me when I'm traveling for work. She knows I keep them. I have a whole folder. I press play. The first 4 seconds were just silence. Not the kind of silence when someone hits record by accident. The kind where someone is making sure no one can hear them. Then her voice. Daddy. Not dad. Not even how she usually says it. Small. Like she was trying to make herself smaller than she already was. Daddy, I found Grandma Helen's old tablet under the sink. I'm in the attic. I don't know if this will send. Aunt Patricia took my phone. She said I was lying about everything, and Grandma said if I try to call you again, she's going to tell everyone at school what I did. But I didn't do anything, Daddy. I promise. I've been up here for 3 days. They bring me crackers. I'm really cold. I don't know if you can hear this, but please come home. Please. 43 seconds. Then nothing. I sat there for probably 5 full seconds just staring at the tray table. Then I flagged down the flight attendant. I want to back up, because I need you to understand how we got there. How my 9-year-old daughter ended up in an attic while I was 1,000 miles away, and her grandmother and aunt were downstairs watching cable television. My wife, my ex-wife, her name is Stacy. We separated when our daughter Lily was 4. It wasn't ugly the way some divorces are. It was just quiet and exhausted and sad. Stacy moved back to her hometown in central Ohio. I stayed in Columbus. We shared custody, alternating weeks, and for 5 years it mostly worked. The problem was Stacy's mother, Dorothy. Dorothy never liked me. That part I knew from the beginning. I was never the right kind of man for her daughter. Not the right religion, not the right background, didn't grow up in the right kind of house. She was polite about it for years. The kind of polite that has a blade in it if you press too hard. When Stacy and I split, Dorothy stopped being polite. She told Lily things. Small things at first. The daddy worked too much. The daddy chose his job over his family. The daddy wasn't there. Then, bigger things. That the divorce was my fault. That I had made her mother cry. I found out from Lily, piece by piece, the way you find out everything with kids, sideways, half by accident, when they're tired and their guard is down, and they say something that stops you cold. I talked to Stacy about it twice. The first time she apologized and said she'd speak to her mother. The second time she got defensive and said I was being too sensitive and that Dorothy was just going through a hard time. I should have pushed harder. I know that now. Last spring, Lily's school had a 3-day weekend. President's Day plus a teacher planning day. It was technically my weekend, but Lily had asked if she could go stay with her grandmother because her cousin was visiting from out of state. I said yes. Of course I said yes. She was excited. I left for Denver that Monday morning for a work conference. Engineering consulting, infrastructure projects. The kind of thing that sounds boring unless you're the one doing it. And even then, honestly, sometimes it sounds boring. The conference ran Monday through Wednesday. I landed in Denver and switched my phone to airplane mode. Standard move. I told Lily. I'd call her Tuesday night. I didn't know she wouldn't have her phone to answer. The flight attendant had no idea what to do with me. I told her I needed to land. I told her my daughter had sent me a message saying she'd been locked in an attic for 3 days. She looked at me the way people look at you when they're trying to decide if you're having a medical episode or a mental one. I showed her the message. I watched her listen to it. I watched her face change. She got the pilot involved. There's a whole protocol for family emergencies mid-flight. I didn't know that before. I do now. They contacted air traffic control. There was a discussion I wasn't part of. We were about 40 minutes from Denver, and I determined it was faster to continue to landing rather than divert. Those 40 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat there with my hands flat on my thighs, and I did not move. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was somewhere past crying, in a place that was very quiet and very focused. I called 911 from the ground before I even reached the gate. I told them my daughter's name. I told them the address, Dorothy's house on Fieldstone Road in Garfield Township. I told them she'd been in the attic for approximately 3 days. I told them her grandmother and her Aunt Patricia were in the house. The dispatcher asked me a series of questions I answered as clearly as I could, and she told me officers would be sent immediately. I was in Denver. The drive home was 12 hours. Garfield Township is not a big place. It has 2 sheriff's deputies, and they share a cruiser. The nearest hospital with a pediatric unit is 45 minutes away in Morrow County. I rented a car. I drove. I've driven that stretch of I-70 more times than I can count. I used to drive it when Lily was a baby, before I knew how to book flights efficiently. Before money was easier. I know every rest stop. I know where the speed traps are outside of Salina. I know which radio stations fade out and when. I drove it in 9.5 hours. I don't recommend that. I also don't regret it. I called Stacy from the road. She answered on the second ring, which surprised me because it was almost midnight by then. "Where's Lily?" I said. I didn't say hello. There was a pause. "Too long." "She's at Mom's," Stacy said. "I thought you knew." "Stacy, the sheriff is at your mother's house right now. Where is our daughter?" Another pause. Then, "She's fine. She's just, Mom had to keep her upstairs because she was acting out. She was being disrespectful, and Patricia thought it was best to give her some space to calm down." I pulled off onto the shoulder of the highway. I sat there for a moment. "She's been in the attic for 3 days," I said. "She recorded herself on an old tablet telling me she's cold and hungry and asked me to come home." Silence. "Stacy!" My voice surprised me. It was very calm. "Is there any version of this conversation where what has been done to our daughter is acceptable to you?" She didn't answer that. She started talking about how Dorothy had been under a lot of stress, how Lily could be difficult, how I didn't understand the full situation. I put the phone in the passenger seat. I didn't hang up. I just set it down and kept driving while she talked. It was 6:17 in the morning when I pulled onto Fieldstone Road. The sun was barely up. There was a sheriff's cruiser in the driveway and another one at the curb. An ambulance was backed up close to the front door. I parked behind the cruiser. I walked toward the house, and a deputy stopped me in the yard. "Sir, you need to. I am her father," I said. "My name is Ryan Callahan. I'm the one who called." He looked at me for a second, then he stepped aside. There was a female deputy inside, who I later found out was named Schultz. She was the one who had gone up to the attic first. She met me in the entryway, and she looked me in the eye and she said, "She's okay. She's talking." She asked if you were coming. I don't have the right words for what happened to me in that moment. I've tried to find them. I can't. "She's with the paramedics right now," Deputy Schultz said. "She's dehydrated, and her temperature was low when we got to her, but she's alert, and she knows what's going on. She's tough." I nodded. My throat wasn't working. "We need you to stay calm when you see her," she said, not unkindly. The way people say things when they've done this before, and they know what tends to happen when parents see their kids after something like this. "I know," I said. The attic stairs were pull-down, the kind with the little rope. There was a padlock on the latch. An actual padlock. One of the deputies had cut it before I got there, and it was sitting on the hallway floor when I walked past it. I didn't look at it for more than a second. I didn't trust myself to. Lily was sitting on a sleeping bag the paramedics had brought up. She had a foil emergency blanket around her shoulders, and she was holding a juice box with both hands, and there was a paramedic next to her taking her blood pressure. She looked up when she heard me on the stairs. She didn't say anything. She just started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just immediately, completely, like something releasing. I sat down on the floor next to her, and I put my arms around her, and the foil blanket crinkled, and the paramedic shifted to give me room, and I held her for a long time. She said into my shoulder, "I didn't know if it would send." "It sent," I said. "I put it on Wi-Fi. Grandma doesn't know the password, but I guessed it. It's her cat's name. That was so smart, I said. You were so smart. I told Grandma I wanted to call you, and she said you were busy with work and you weren't coming back this time. Her voice was muffled against my jacket. She said sometimes dads just stop coming back. I closed my eyes. I'm here, I said. I'm always going to be here. Dorothy was in the living room when they brought her out. She was in her bathrobe. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as defiant, like I was the one who had done something wrong by showing up. Patricia was in the kitchen. I could hear her on the phone with someone. Her lawyer, I found out later. Dorothy looked at Deputy Schultz and said, I don't understand what all the fuss is about. She was being punished. Schultz said, Ma'am, a child cannot be locked in an unheated space without adequate food or water as a form of discipline. That's not how this works. Dorothy said. She was lying about her father. Someone had to do something. I didn't say anything. I had made a decision on that 9.5-hour drive that I was not going to say one word to Dorothy directly. Not because I was afraid of what I'd do, because I already knew exactly what I was going to do, and I needed her to not know it yet. Lily was admitted to the hospital for observation, mild dehydration, slightly low body temperature, nothing that didn't resolve within 24 hours. She had a room with a window that looked out over a parking lot, which she found boring. So I brought her the hospital's community puzzle cart, and we did a 500-piece puzzle of a covered bridge while she told me, in pieces, everything that had happened. She'd arrived at Dorothy's on Saturday afternoon. Sunday morning, she'd said something at breakfast. She couldn't even remember exactly what, something about a movie she'd seen at my place. And Dorothy had said something sharp back, and Lily had said, my dad says that's not true. And that was apparently the moment. Patricia had sided with Dorothy immediately. They'd taken her phone. They'd told her she needed time alone to think about her attitude. The attic was where they put things that were out of place. My daughter was 9 years old, and they put her where they put things that were out of place. My daughter was 9 years old, and they put her where they put things that were out of place. She'd been up there for 3 days. They brought her crackers and a cup of water twice a day. There was no heat. It was February. She'd found the old tablet wedged behind a box of Christmas decorations. Dorothy had hidden it up there after getting a new one, and apparently forgot it was there. The tablet still had a charge. Lily had quietly searched the Wi-Fi until she found one that looked like Dorothy's, Muffin Doro Thurzalate cat, and it worked on the second try. She'd had 1 bar of signal try. She'd had 1 bar of signal. She'd recorded the memo, hit send, and put the tablet back exactly where she found it, so no one would know. She is 9 years old. Dorothy was charged with child endangerment and unlawful restraint of a minor. Patricia was charged as an accessory. She had been in the house, she had known, and she had done nothing except tell Lily to stop being dramatic when Lily asked to call me. The case took 8 months to resolve. Dorothy's attorney argued that it was a matter of parental discipline, and that I was an absent father who had dramatized a normal family situation for custody leverage. Stacy initially gave a statement supporting Dorothy's version of events. I want to be honest about that part, because it's the part that hurt the most, not Dorothy. I never expected anything different from Dorothy, but Stacy. Stacy, who had watched me coach Lily's soccer team, who knew I drove to Ohio twice a month, who had called me at midnight when Lily had her tonsils out because she thought I would want to know. Stacy stood in front of a family court mediator and said that I tended to overreact. The voice memo was 43 seconds long. I played it. The mediator listened to it without expression. When it ended, she wrote something down and didn't ask Stacy any more questions. Dorothy was sentenced to 14 months, with 8 to serve. Patricia received 18 months probation and mandatory parenting education courses. The judge made a statement at sentencing that I won't quote directly, but that used the phrase deliberate cruelty toward a child twice. Stacy did not support Dorothy publicly after that. She also did not apologize to me directly. We had a conversation once in the parking lot of Lily's school. She said she was sorry. I said okay. There wasn't much else to say. The family court modified our custody arrangement. Lily now lives with me full-time. Stacy has regular visitation, supervised initially, then independent once Lily said she felt comfortable. That's how we've handled it. What Lily feels comfortable with. She gets to decide. There's something I want to say about what I did in the 24 hours after I got Lily out of the hospital. Because people have asked me. Stacy's family, especially. They wanted to know if I was going to take it further. If I was going to talk. If I was going to make things difficult. I had a friend from college, Joel, who worked in investigative journalism. Not a reporter himself, but the kind of person who knew people. I called him from Lily's hospital room while she was sleeping. We talked for about 40 minutes. I told him what had happened. I told him that Dorothy had, years earlier, been investigated by Franklin County Children's Services following a complaint from a neighbor, a complaint that had been closed without action because the family had cooperated and provided letters of support. I told him that Patricia had worked as a licensed child care provider until 2019, when her license was not renewed following an anonymous complaint. I gave Joel everything I had. He made some calls. 3 weeks after Lily came home, there was a piece in a regional Ohio news outlet. It was not sensational. It was factual. It named Dorothy and Patricia. It mentioned the prior investigation. It mentioned the current charges. Dorothy's sister called me, screaming, said I had destroyed the family. Said I had destroyed the family. Said I had no right. My phone showed 61 missed calls over the following 4 days. I returned exactly none of them. I saved that number. 61 missed calls from people who were angry that I had told the truth about what was done to my daughter. 61 people more concerned about the family's reputation than about a 9-year-old in an attic in February with no heat and a cup of water twice a day. I don't have anything else to say to any of them. Lily is 11 now. She's in 5th grade. She plays travel soccer and she's obsessed with marine biology. And she has a best friend named, well, she'd kill me if I used her real name. Let's say she has a best friend who comes over every Friday and they watch nature documentaries and eat an alarming quantity of goldfish crackers. She doesn't talk about what happened very often. When she does, it's usually matter of fact, the way kids sometimes are about things adults would never recover from. She told me once, doing the dishes, I knew you'd come. I just didn't know how fast. I didn't say anything. I just kept drawing the pan I was holding. Grandma Dorothy was wrong, she said, about Dad's stopping coming back. Yeah, I said. I kind of knew she was wrong even when she said it. She handed me a glass to dry. But it was still scary. I know, I said. She nodded once. Very decisive. She nodded once. Very decisive. The way she's always been decisive, even at 2 years old, even at 4, even sitting in that attic with 1 bar of signal and a tablet she found behind a box of Christmas ornaments. She hit send, and she trusted me to come. I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never has reason to doubt that. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I don't tell it to relitigate anything. Dorothy served her sentence. Patricia completed her probation. The court made its decisions. That part is over. I tell it because of something Deputy Schultz said to me when I was leaving the house on Fieldstone Road that morning, while they were walking Dorothy out to the cruiser. She came up beside me and said, "She's going to be okay, you know. The ones who reach out. They're always the stronger ones." I've thought about that a lot. The reaching out. The 43 seconds. The 1 bar of signal and the guest Wi-Fi password and the small voice making itself heard anyway. If you're a parent and you're reading this, your kid is always telling you something. Sometimes it's big and clear and impossible to miss. Sometimes it's a drawing they slide under a door. Sometimes it's the way they go quiet in the car when you drive past a certain house. Listen, go back and listen again. They don't send those messages to just anyone. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that February morning. Not in any grand philosophical way, just the quiet, practical kind of thinking you do when you're washing dishes at 11 at night and your daughter is asleep down the hall and you're replaying everything that led to that 43-second voice memo. Here's what I keep coming back to. None of what happened to Lily was random. Dorothy didn't wake up one morning and decide to be cruel out of nowhere. That cruelty had been practiced for years. In small comments at dinner tables, in the way she'd talked about me to a 4-year-old who didn't have the language yet to tell me what she was hearing, in the way she'd trained everyone around her to look the other way and call it family loyalty. Patricia didn't lock that attic latch on impulse. She did it because she'd spent years learning that there were no consequences for going along with Dorothy. Stacy didn't give that statement to the mediator because she was a bad person at her core. She did it because she'd spent her whole life choosing the path that kept the peace. And by the time it really mattered, That habit was stronger than her judgment. Every single thing that happened in that attic was the end of a long chain, and every single thing that happened after the charges, the sentencing, the article, the 61 missed calls, that was the end of a different chain. One I had a hand in building. I'm not saying I did everything right. I made choices in those 9.5 hours that I'd probably make differently now. I said things on the phone to Stacy that I don't regret, but that I could have said better. But I also made one choice that I will never second guess, which was deciding somewhere around the Kansas border at 3 in the morning that I was going to tell the truth about what had been done to my daughter. Not out of anger. Not for revenge, because the only thing that stops a pattern like Dorothy's is exposure. Silence is what fed it for so long. Lily did something extraordinary with one bar of signal and a tablet hidden behind Christmas ornaments. She reached out. She made herself heard. That's not a small thing. That's not just a kid being resourceful. That's a child who had been told she didn't matter, that her father wasn't coming, that she was out of place and out of options, and she decided not to believe it. She guessed the password on the second try, and she hit send, and she trusted that someone on the other end was paying attention. I think about what it takes to do that, to be cold and scared and alone in a dark room and still choose to reach out instead of folding. That's not something you teach a child in a lecture. It grows from years of small moments where they test whether you show up, and you do, and they files away somewhere deep. Lily knew I was coming because she'd seen me come, every time, for 9 years. That trust was built on ordinary Tuesday evenings and boring drives to soccer practice and phone calls from hotel rooms. None of it was dramatic. All of it mattered. What Dorothy got wrong, what people like Dorothy always get wrong, is that they think they can rewrite a child's reality by saying it loud enough and long enough. But kids are not as easily rewritten as adults assume. Lily knew, even when Dorothy told her dad stop coming back, that it wasn't true about her dad. She had evidence. 9 years of it. I don't tell this story to make myself look good. I tell it because I think there are a lot of people out there, parents, kids, anyone who's ever been told they were out of place, who need to hear that reaching out is always worth it. That the message might send, that someone might be on the other end, listening, already moving toward you before you even finish speaking. Lily is 11 now, and she doesn't need me to protect her from the memory of what happened. She's already turned it into something she carries lightly. I'm still working on that part,